Hi, I'm George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning. As usual, something different today, really different, a Shark Tank lesson. How about that? And explain it in a minute. And it's about the most overlooked salespeople that most of us have, and those are our CSRs. And it's going to be presented by Stu Derlin. Let me tell you about Stuart, if I may, here. I'll show you his picture, and we'll tell you about his background. So let's move to his picture. Thank you. Okay. As you can see, he was or has been very active as an agent. He is an agent in Warwick, New York. Where is Warwick, Stu? Incidentally.
Work is just over the New Jersey border. We're like 5 miles away from it, maybe 50 miles northwest of New York City, out in the country. We're a bit rural.
Oh, great. Well, you've been there a long time, and then you run the technology and the financing and the finances and marketing, and I really like that because it gets you involved, and it has gotten you so involved in the things that to running agencies. You're one of the, and you didn't know I was going to say this, but you're one of the 8 or 10 guys in the country that I have followed over the years to watch what you're doing. You always a step ahead of everybody. I really like that. I don't know where you get all this from, but you do it, and we're going to show that in a minute. And we'll come back at it too. I hope
Okay.
someday. You were,
Yep.
yeah, because you're doing. Are you speaking? I mean, are you doing speaking conventions or some of that kind of stuff too?
I'm still actively involved in the industry, mostly on the technology side with ACT and
Act.
Augie and those groups where a lot of us are familiar with now.
Yeah, but I was amazed that you've been 25 years or so in the AskNet program. Now it's called the Applied Client Network, and you were president. You were relatively young as a president, and I think one of your greatest attributes you have is the fact that you are married to Cal Derlin, and your wife is a very. I've already interviewed her. She's on a Monday morning. If anybody would like to go back and hear it, she is a big a big player, a big manager of in Accord, and she's really been helpful to me to get started. And then I got to you from her, and blah blah blah, and here we are. And I started noticing your writing and your stuff and your speeches and all, and then you came up with the Shark Tank idea, and I saw this article somewhere. That was in the Washington Big Eye, I think. At any rate, and let me show you a picture of the Shark Tank people now. Okay, if anybody hasn't seen Shark Tank, if you're not watching Shark Tank, of course it's off now, I think, for the summer, but it is the most fun program. I love it. I have seen it maybe 100 times. You haven't seen it very much though. What made you zero in on Shark Tank, Cal?
I think that was the idea came from Nancy Doucette. I believe they wrote that article for PIA, and they called it the Shark Tank. And I got a couple of agents with some different ideas on how to grow your business and do things maybe a little bit differently than a lot of agencies could be doing them right now, and which is what we're going to be talking about here shortly.
Well, I love it. I tell you what, anybody who hasn't seen Shark Tank, you need to do it when you can. And it's all there's repeats and so forth. But boy, those are all billionaires sitting up there, or many, many hundred millions. And what they analyze or what they do to somebody who needs the money is really pretty scary. It is exciting because they go right to the heart of the matter. They don't fool around, but they put their own money in the thing. And I learned a lot from them. I learn every week from them. Learn what I should do and what I shouldn't do, and what's going to make money and what isn't, and so forth. I like to think. At any rate,
I think a lot of it has.
Go ahead.
Sorry, a lot of it has to do with the innovation. They're looking for people with innovative ideas and willing to change and try new things, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with the agency world.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, and they're very good at it, and I think they've changed the world a lot. Anyhow, I noticed your article, and you were talking about CSRs, and you said, hey, they play a key role in sales. Tell me where'd this come from?
Well, this actually goes back a ways, and the key phrase there was in parentheses, says, and they might not know it, and that came, and again, it was back in 2007, February 2007, where we came up with the idea that, and it wasn't necessarily a new idea, but I think it was new as far as agencies implementing it, and that was the idea of incentive-based compensation in paying your CSRs. But now we were thinking of it as, well, we've got a good group of CSRs who do a really good job of customer service out there. but do they know they actually sell? And when we started talking to them, it was a 9-month process, start to finish, when we just, got the idea to try it, and then following through the implementation and the PowerPoints and presentations we did to the with the CSRs, just to show them that they actually were salespeople. That their eyes started opening. We went back and we showed that. I went back 3 years, and that was 3 years from 2009 prior, and pulled all the new business that we had written that didn't have a producer associated with them. So then, it was just walk in or call in business basically, and broke it out by CSR, so that when we went in and did these presentations to show them, hey, look, you really do sell. Their thinking is, well, somebody, we've got a homeowner's client, let's say, and somebody calls in and say, hey, can you, maybe, quote my automobile? And they say, sure, we'll quote it and we'll get back to you, as soon as we get the numbers, blah, blah, blah. They didn't think of that as sales. That was just customer service. That's what they were supposed to do. But in reality, as an agency owner, we have to look at that as a sale and try and help improve the number of times they get that opportunity. So when we showed them the numbers, and they go, wow, we wrote that much business? And I said, yeah, you wrote that much business. So it was kind of a baseline for us to start the conversion and start the idea of incentive-based compensation, and get them comfortable with it, because they weren't all that comfortable. It wasn't like we weren't treating them as a producer. We weren't going commission only or anything like that. They were still getting paid a salary, but now they were getting paid a salary plus incentive to write new business. And what we were showing them, and I guess this is the key point, what we were showing them was, if we do our job right for you, you will write more business and make more money than if I just, gave you a 2, 3, 4% increase, whatever the going rate was, and it was actually probably less than that in some of the past few years in the industry. Rather than doing it that way and just having that incremental, where you actually can kind of be in charge of your own income at that point. So that's kind of the history and going back a bit on how we originally did that.
Stu, when I see this, I think, because one of the things that my wife and I have run something called insurance hiring system for 20 some odd years, and it's a testing program like Caliper and Omni and so forth. And we test by the job position. We compare people to the best of the best CSRs and so forth. But what I'm saying is that part of that program and any kind of measurements program, it will be changing a bit, because as the more people who come into the CSR as a salesperson, the things that you would test on, the things you look for, would be maybe somewhat different. They would be more not just service, but also selling. And then you've got your existing staff and your new staff. I imagine it scared the existing staff some, didn't it?
Oh, it absolutely did, because as soon as you start, sales is just inherent in a lot of people. It's something that makes a lot of people nervous. Now, some people are really good at it and thrive on it, but I bet you a lot more people don't necessarily thrive on it. And the idea of convincing somebody to buy a product from you, it can be a little nerve-wracking to some. And you mentioned Omni and some of the profile, and I'll touch on that in a few slides down as well,
okay.
And how we did that.
All right, go ahead.
So basically, what we want to talk about, agency needs to provide certain things, if this is going to work, and this is what we kind of learned from the process. We have to provide the sales tools. We have to provide sales training, and that's, I think, a really key one that a lot of agencies don't think about for CSRs. They do for producers, but not for CSRs. Got to talk about metrics, and then, of course, the incentive-based compensation. So that's kind of the groundwork of where we'll move forward into. So let me talk about what we felt. Let me do the sales tool side of things, because I think it's important, because if you don't have the tools in place, you can't make the CSRs efficient. You can't provide them the extra time that they need to do the extra step of talking to their clients about other lines of business. So, first thing I had in on here was their agency management system. May seem obvious, but I say, how many agencies out there are really utilizing, I won't say fully, because I don't think any agency is fully utilizing their agency management system, but I mean, using it to a high degree, all the capabilities that you have. And that's not just from a standpoint of, sending out letters. And that's one of the things is sending out automatic letters. Some people think letters aren't so in anymore, but you know what I think? I think that you develop a package of solutions out there, and one of those packages is that you still have automated letters going out to people at that point, prospects and to clients. They differentiate a little bit. But you want to have complete data in your system. You want to have all the information, cell phones, emails, hobbies, anything that can help you better understand your client's needs. You need to have an agency management system. You need to use the technology that's built into the system, real-time, download, activity notifications, direct bill commission download. These are huge things that a lot of agencies aren't taking advantage of. In the industry, and I mentioned that I'm involved in Act and Augie quite a bit, and I'm an ambassador for Augie. And the big push now is commercialized download. Now, a lot of agents are afraid to do that, but that is a huge time saver now, and it's working for CSRs. Is the fact if you can get all the commercialized data appropriately downloaded, and it has gotten it improved very significantly, that you save them a ton of time. So the thought process is here, how many things can I do through automation that will cut down on my manual time of my CSRs that allows me to then train them and have them utilize them more in a sales role. So that's kind of the thought process here. So, one of the things, folks may or may not be aware that Ivans now pushes out a report. You can easily get a report from them that will lay out all of your companies, just your companies, and all of the download real-time technologies that are available with those companies, and you can actually look at it graphically and say, what am I doing and what am I not doing? And one of the things that stood out to me, actually there were three things. One was activity notes, another was claims download, and I have to say those two are primarily because companies are just starting to do these. They're just starting to get into this and starting to implement it, so you have to stay on top of them, and you want them to implement so you can do it. But direct bill commission download was a huge time saver. I had at least 6 of my companies that had it. I didn't realize it. I hadn't implemented it, but big time saver. So anything you can do to help use your agency management system to save time will open the door to more sales. A couple other things I mentioned was, let me see if I should be skipping ahead. Yeah, so another thing would be the use of e-signatures and electronic document distribution. More and more companies now are sending policies to us, and ideally I want our customers to get that policy electronically. I think the majority of them are getting to the point where they don't want the paper anyway. So from an efficiency standpoint, rather than me printing it out and spending time doing that and mailing it to them and the cost of postage and all that type of thing, is that I want to send it electronically, but agents have to be aware that, at least in New York State, I have to get a sign-off from the agents to do that. So, once you get the sign-off, you can implement. E-signature.
You mean from the customer?
The customer, yeah. New York State, again, I can't tell everybody if this is a nationwide thing or if it's just New York State. We do have a lot of regulations here, but we do have to get a sign-off from clients to say, yes, I will accept electronic documents from you.
Good.
You get it one time and then it's done. So, we're starting to step through that process so that we can do more of that because we know it'll save us time.
Good.
Another sales tool, great website. If people out there listening don't have a great website, then you're losing out because everything I'm learning, and I'm sitting in on a lot of social media classes, a lot of web tech classes and seminars, is that the client of these days today is going out to the website. As soon as they want to learn something about you, they go immediately out to your website. And if you've got an old static website that doesn't do much for them, they're immediately going to go away. I mean, that's fact of life. It's here that you've got to invest in a good website. I'm on what's coming up to be, I believe, my 6th rendition of it because I actually fell behind the 8 ball here a little bit. Was that in April, end of April, Google changed their algorithms on how they allow people to search for you and that type of thing because they're expecting your website to be mobile ready. So it looks good on any device you happen to look at it on. And by the way, majority of the people are looking for you on their phones, so it's got to be mobile ready so someone can look on their phone and see your information. And that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. So I think I have a good website. May not be great at this point because it's not mobile ready, but there's going to be another rendition of it coming out soon. But that's critical. use of social media, not being afraid to use social media, having this Facebook page out there. I think we have over 1,000 likes on our Facebook page. That might not be a huge number, but I think it's a really good number
It
for
is. So it's a
independent
big,
agencies
big number.
to have over 1,000 people seeing what you're doing, and then having regular posts to it, having somebody that pushes things out regularly. This aspect of the sales and the CSR, just to tie it in, is that you need to use today's technology to create the driving the business into your office, so that when the CSRs have all this time to sell, that the business is actually coming in the door, because it's not necessarily phoning in anymore. You know what I mean? So it's using these different technologies. Testimonials. People, when they go out to we do a Google search, they're looking at testimonials. They're doing it for hotels, they're doing it for restaurants, they're doing it for everything. And believe me, they're going to be doing it for independent agents as well. And if you have good testimonials out there, it's going to drive more business into your office. I put down here automated emails. This is something we're just implementing right now, which is, again, it takes the emphasis off the CSRs from having to push out emails necessarily on a manual basis to clients. And there's technology now that lets you create a series of emails, have them targeted a particular audience. So in this case, our first go at this was every brand new client to the agency is going to start getting these automated emails. First one is going to be an introduction of us. It'll be images of all the people, who they're going to work with, that sort of thing. But then there'll be some other ones. But the nice part of it is you say, okay, first one goes out automatically once the client gets put into a queue. Next email is going to go out, 29 days later. You pick it. You define it. So that there's a regular automatic type of putting yourself in front of people through email technology. So earlier I mentioned writing letters. You're having letters automatically come out of your system. In addition to that, you have automatic emails, coming out of Outlook and constant contact and that type of thing. And so you're getting in front of people more. I mean, that's the whole idea, that, driving business to your CSRs. This is a key one too, is training the CSRs on how to better handle various situations that they're hit with all the time. How often did somebody call in, maybe they get a quote, but then they say, I'm still shopping, I'm not ready to go right now. To have them prepared to respond to that type of situation, and it takes training. It takes somebody, getting involved with you and doing that. So maybe instead of saying, okay, well, as soon as you've done shopping, maybe get back to us, let us know. Maybe you say something like, certainly, a good price is important. May I ask what else besides price is important to you? And you sort of keep the conversation going. Doesn't mean you'll get the account, but the whole idea is to garner information from the client, garner more information from them that could be beneficial to you in the future, because now you're going to document that in the system. The person that says, well, I'm all set, I'm good with, XYZ insurance agency. Well, maybe, the CSRs get trained to say something more like, I'm glad to hear you have a good relationship with XYZ agency. That's really important. May I ask what you value the most in your current agent relationship? So now you're finding out something about, okay, so why are they with that agency? Let me document that. Maybe that's helpful to me in the future, and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of, it's helping your CSRs respond to those situations where previously they would just be a hang-up. You'd be done. The conversation would be over at that point. And the last thing is, on this one for sales tools, at least as far as I'm concerned here, is developing a theme. And we work with a company called Steady Sales. I definitely give Sheldon a nod here. Steady Sales helps us with this, but basically one of the things we did with them was develop a theme. And our theme, it came after a lot of conversation, was serve plus one. So we started all we talked about was serve plus one, and what that meant was that we would service a client, because guess what? A customer service rep, that's what they're supposed to do. A customer calls in, wants to have something done on their car, change a deductible, add a vehicle, whatever the case may be. You're going to service the account. You're going to do what they've requested to do. But while you're doing that, you're going to be looking at the screen and saying, what is it I'm missing here? What is it that I don't have already? What can I ask this person? Do I need an email? Do I need a cell phone? Do I have am I writing only the home And let me ask about the automobile at this point. So things like that you always want to do a plus one. You service them, and then you say, I need to add a policy, I need to add an email, I need to add something, I need to take advantage of this contact with the particular client.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing here, and what I'm envisioning is there going to be a number of training programs throughout the country for CSRs and selling. It's got to be. This is just too good.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It could be whether it's classes, whether it's coaching, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of leads into our next topic. The next
Training,
thing is
yeah,
the
right.
training aspect of it. And you had mentioned before, some of the profile testing that goes on here. When we originally did this back in 2007, that's one of the first things we did. That was one of the processes. We set up an Omni profile, but you can also use Caliber, there's Sandler, there's other tools that you can use out there. And just we didn't profile them as producers because again they're not pure salespeople. That's what we're looking for. We just wanted to see what sales capability they have, and those tools always have great. If you say, what can I do to help this person do a better job in selling, they always had great suggestions on how to do that. So if you're working with your existing sales staff, which a lot of people will be doing if they just starting off with a incentive-based compensation. You need to do that. You need to get a feel for where they are. So, I'll say it's a little easier if you're going out hiring because you're a hire CSR. You're also going to hire somebody that passes those selling points, within a profile test. But doing your own existing people, you got to get a feel, and then you got to say, okay, I'm willing to help them, where they need to be developed at that point.
Good.
And so that's important. And then I put down, hiring a sales coach, but you had a good suggestion, that maybe there's going to be a lot more classes out there to help them and that sort of thing to do. We happen to hire Steady Sales to do this. It's not about going to a big serious producer school at this point. You're trying to help them with techniques. You want to teach them to sell value, as I put down here. And how can you ask the question differently? I gave a couple suggestions a minute ago when they called in and on ways they say things. But so now just as an example, here's the typical scenario. If your CSR is being proactive and that they're looking at the screen and they're saying, I only got the home, I don't have the automobile. So a good CSR at that point will say, hey, Mr. Smith, is it okay, if I quote your automobile? And you're going to get you've just left them with a yes or no answer at that point. A lot of the times it's going to be no, and that ends the conversation because they're thinking CSR. Okay, I went that far and I hang up. But what if you turn that question around and what I show on the screen here and say, it looks like we don't have your automobile. May I ask why? And now all of a sudden, just with that one little education piece, just saying it a little bit differently, instead of being yes or no, now you're going to get an answer. You're going to get something that you can document on your system. And it could be that the reason that they don't have it with you is not a good reason, and and you have through the training process, you have ways of asking, further asking questions to actually, drive that quote back to you at that moment in time. But worst case, if it is still a no, that, hey, my brother's in the insurance industry in Jersey, and that's where it is, and we just have to we got to keep some of it there. Okay, that's fine. Now Now you don't have to reach out to them, after that.
It's amazing to me Stu, that 3 or 4 words that people get can make a difference. May I ask why? That's 4 words, and that could make a heck of a financial difference in the long run. I always allude back to Cosmo Conti, who was the #1 State Farm agent for 15 years, and Cosmo sold more life insurance than any State Farm agents more life insurance. Can you imagine? And he did it with 4 words, and his 4 words are these: are you happy with? Are you happy with? So that's what you're really saying here. May I ask why? Are you happy with? Yeah. And people eventually always said no, so he sold a ton of it. At any rate, that's 4 words. 4 words could make a difference in life.
Yeah, and so that's not hard. So and so you're helping your CSRs. And by the way, we're tying it back to compensation. If you can make them better salespeople and they sell more, it's not just good for the agency, it's good for the CSR, and they're making more money as well.
More money, obviously, sure. All right. And the last
So
part.
the metric side of things here, and some facts, and this a lot of your listeners will probably understand this and have heard this before, but the average consumer has 4 insurance policies. How many does an independent agent have? The last check I saw, the last data I saw said 1.3. So maybe it's 1.4. It's right around that range. But we need to be at 2 plus. We need to be at 2 plus at this point, and it helps in a lot of a lot of ways. It helps. The next thing, customers who bundle policies have higher retention. The more policies you have, we all know, the longer you're going to keep that particular client, and there's data on that. It's far less expensive to account round than to write a policy. I'd much rather teach my CSRs how to account round a customer that they know and that they have a relationship with than the call-in person that's shopping around, and you have to go through all the time of collecting all the data about the vehicle, about the person, about their losses, all that kind of stuff, and that in the hope that you write that particular account. You're much better off. It's much less expensive to account round. Doesn't mean you don't want to write new policies, but I mean, I imagine most people listening to here probably have a pretty good book of business, and if you're hovering in that under 2 policy per client realm, that means you have a lot of opportunity is what I call it.
Let me just interrupt you a second here, Stu. Allstate, many times, Harlan Worthen was their number 1 field man for marketing guy for 20 some odd years. They figured that the average customer has 7.1 insurance policies. And let me show you the differentiation. But what they were also talking about was life, health, and those kinds of things. Say on top of that. And so then he said, you're selling. In essence, what he would always say, and he was right. You've got 2 policies with them, but you got 5 competitors out there that are hitting them too, and that was always good. Which is really what you're saying here. You're talking more about property casualty, but they put it all together for what it's worth.
They put it together, and I had heard too, and take this with a grain of salt. I had heard too that some of the direct writers write a vehicle per policy. So if you have 2 vehicles, that becomes 2 policies. So they may be counting that. That sounded like, that's a great number if you're at 7, but that's a powerful number if you're actually up that far.
Right.
And the last thing, the monoline policy will only be with you how many years? Well, they say 2 to 4 years. My guess is that these days, with the way people are shopping, it's much closer to the 2 than it is to the 4 if you've just got a monoline policy. So you certainly want to have more than 1 policy in place per client.
Right.
And then this was one of the most important things. I guess this, but you actually have to do this. And Steady Sales helped us with this. Sheldon helped us with this. Was you actually document certain things. So, and this wasn't all of them, but this was some of them. Think about this. If you document, just take a month or a couple of weeks and document the number of inbound service calls your CSRs take. Okay, so those are the ones where call in, they just say, hey, I need a change. I need something done on my policy. Can you work with me on that? And so I call that the opportunity. That's you've got them on the phone now. You need surplus 1. You don't need to just service them. You want to see if you can get something else out of them, even if it's just an email that you don't already have. Get a +1. But so now document, say, number of upsell asks. Okay, that's not number of upsells. That's the asks. So out of the number of service calls that you got in, now tell me how many upsells did you ask for? Where you were looking for increased coverage, or what's the number of cross-sell asks that you did? And document that, and then say, okay, out of the asks, when then somebody said yes, you ask, what were the number of quotes that you got out of that, and then how many new policies are written. If you don't do something like that to at least have a feel for how the process is working and where you're at on it, you're kind of in the dark. You're kind of hoping that it's working, or you feel like it's working, but you don't know that it's working. So I guess the point is, and there's various different metrics you can use. We should all be getting our arms completely around our metrics of how our CSRs handle the business. So, this leads to the compensation side of things, and I'm going to say that I'm going to keep this. I'll keep this a little bit high level, just because my feeling is that how you deal with this is completely specific to each individual agency. It could be a budget consideration. It could be, just what your feeling is to what, how you should handle it. We've done variations of what you'll see on the screen. You can do salary plus, some commission first year only. You can do commission new and also a little bit renewal. What you got to keep in mind again is that these are not, you are paying them a salary to service. So these commissions will not be what you typically see with a producer. At least we didn't. I should say that, a caveat. We didn't. We felt a producer, they earned a higher commission, but you're still paying a commission. And then maybe a slight renewal, you could do that. That's an option you could do. Maybe it's for certain employees and whatever. You have that option to do that so that they have a little bit of a book of business building on there. But the bottom line is that on the first year, you're incentivizing them to write more business so they put more money in their pocket in any given year. And then also think about bonus ideas. And I just threw down a few here that had come up that we've utilized before. But if you want somebody, a new client that calls in, you want them to sell at least 2 policies. You don't want it to just be the auto or just be the home at that point. So, if they write 2 policies, give them a dollar amount. If they write 3 policies, a little higher. If they happen to write 4 policies, a little, next notch above that. Just what works and feels right for you. You could do it on revenue growth plans. We've set it up in the past where we do it by department. So personal lines, personal lines grows by a goal that you set in the beginning of the year, for everybody. Everybody's well aware of it. They get a percentage of that growth. This is an interesting one too. Increased policy per client factor. So if you use your agency management system and you run a report, and it says based on all your personal lines clients, your average is 1.68. Average policies per client, because that's what it'll come out to. It'll come out to some sort of factor like that.
Right.
Overall, you say, well, I want to set a goal that I want to be at, whatever. Pick the number, 1.87 by the end of the year. And I will say that this is a tougher factor to attain than you would imagine. And when you do the numbers, you realize how much work you have to do to get to where you need to be. So just an example of that, and it's a simple example, but just say you have 2,000 personalized policies, and out of those 2,000, it averages 1.68 policies per client. If you want to increase that to 2.0, that's very aggressive. You need to be at 2,381. So you have to be plus 381 policies above the 2,000, and you really need to take in retention, because if your retention is 10%, what are you going to lose? You may lose 200 policies in a year. So really, to get to 2.0, you got to have 581 policies. So I think it's a bit of an eye opener when you look at it that way. It's to the importance of writing new business and adding policies to your book, getting to that number. Of course, increasing client count. That's the overall growth of the agency. You can have certain bonuses tied to, if this year at the end of December 31st, we had X number of clients, and then we want to have this number at the end. You could do that, set a number to it, or maybe you do it quarterly. You look at them so they don't have to wait a whole year to get some, cash value out of that. And then you also want to think of things that affect your non-sales staff. Okay, so you see, we have a person that does just claims. That's all she does. She's very experienced at it, very good at it. And we set up a survey. So every time a claim closes, she sends out a survey from our office. Key to that survey is at the end of it, it has additional comments. Anything else you want to tell us about, how we help handle your claim. And then at the last question is, would you mind us using this as a testimonial on our website and other places? And they get to click, a yes or no at that point.
I like that.
And I can tell you that we get a lot of those back, and we get a lot of yeses. And every one of those yeses goes to my social media person who ends up putting it out on the website as a testimonial. And then we do further requests, by the way, to get people to do, those are the people you want to actually do a Google testimonial to us. We ask them if they'd mind, doing that. We don't push them, but we ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. But that person then gets, in this case, they get $10. Every time a survey comes back, we review at our weekly staff meeting, and they get $10 for every one of those that come back. So I'm trying to reward the non-sales staff a little bit on something that they're doing. So the point there is just keep in mind your non-sales staff, and if there's anything that they can do to make you more efficient, maybe there's some sort of a bonusing thing you can do for them to incentivize them to do that.
All right, I have a question for you right now. This is the perfect time. You've been in it for a while. How many years? 3 or 4 years you've had? What's the real world look like with your CSRs, selling, etc.? Is it
What
working?
you mean? How we
No, I mean,
2000 and
well, yeah, whatever. How's it? How are they doing? Are they happy with the incentive-based compensation? Is it working?
yes, absolutely. They love every month. I get a producer report. I mean, because they're tied in now. They get associated as a producer, even though the CSRs, and I get a report, and I'm cutting checks every single month, varying degrees, but they're decent sized checks sometimes for them, and they love seeing the additional money coming in. It's worked really well, and we've had steady growth. We're been best practice agency for the last 2 years. Hopefully, we'll be again this year, and so I think it's working. I know it's
Oh,
working.
I love it.
I say
I
that.
love it. Well, let me ask this: if people would like to know a little bit more, I mean, this to me is, I think this is industry changing what you've come out with here, and its simplicity is amazing because it's not, this is not rocket science. It's it's just it's good common sense taken forced there by commoditization or whatever the Geicos of the world have done to us, and you're bringing it back to the personalization, and it's a wonderful, wonderful step.
It's a culture change. It's a culture change,
Yeah,
but the key is that you need to help your CSRs. You need to give them the tools. You need to implement your automation that we talked about early on. You need to train them. They're not just going to pick up on this stuff. You got to train them, and there's good people that can help with that. So.
well, Stu, this is wonderful. I really, really enjoy it. I think that people are going to get you to listen to this. There's your contact information. If you have questions or anything, just give him a holler. I mean, Stu's one of those guys that'll be happy, happy, happy to help you. I know him, and that's terrific. Or look for his suggestions. So I want to thank you again for that, and suggest to people that always remember to go back to your email. Oh, one of the things that we've added that you should know about is, of course, is the you can go back and get a podcast. Go back to the email and you click on there if you want this to be a podcast, so you can take it in the car or whatever you want to do and download it. That's now possible. There are over 30,000 Stu getting this every week now, so it's pretty exciting. We've had some big jumps, and a lot of more things are coming here. So, Stu, once again, I thank you for really doing a terrific job, and I look forward to working with you for a long time in the future.
No, thank you, George. I appreciate it.